And item number 2 is any potential future agenda items that council members would wish the staff to make note of.
I think a large agenda.
Yeah, my list is increasing, but we'll start ticking these off one by one. I'm going to work with Jeff on that. Item number 3 is to discuss the buffer ordinance, and I'll turn that over to Mr. Sanborn and others.
Yeah, so this is coming back to you. Go ahead, Alex.
The Alex Show.
Yeah, Alex is a one-man show tonight.
Darren?
Well done, Alex.
It's not over yet.
I know.
I think it's, Alex, it's been like 3 months since we've looked at this, hasn't it?
Has it been only 3 months?
February, March timeframe was, I think, was the last time we brought a draft of these changes forward to you. And since then, we've been all grappling with a lot of other higher priority things to deal with. But all the while, behind the scenes, Alex and Darren and the planning staff have been churning away on trying to make this a better product as well. And so I guess this is an opportunity for Alex to kind of reintroduce you to where we are in this discussion and hopefully gain some additional guidance from you on how to move this forward.
So what staff's done with what we've provided is an update to the draft ordinance based on the feedback that we last received from council, that last time in March or whenever that we had another work session topic on those items where you guys sent us, your votes basically, or we polled you guys on where you were on some of what seemed to be the sticking points in the ordinance. And now we've had an opportunity to get you something in writing to take a look at, and hopefully you've had time to take a look at it. The one good thing about taking a few months off from it was that Darren, Kathy, and myself got to look at it once again with fresh eyes, and we looked through. Of course, other items have come up. There's been some. We've been dealing now that we have a public policy for how we deal with trees in our village property, like in our rights of way, and how development approvals are being submitted for driveway permits, and we're thinking through that a little bit. I think we might need to, or there's an opportunity to work interdepartmentally with our Public Services Department to see if there's an opportunity to address or clarify some standards for that. So that's one item that, we're not really ready to have anything pinned. But aside from that, the ordinance that you guys have in your agenda packet should have our revised comments after staff having a look at it and what you guys gave us some background on.
The cover memo, which was from Darren, right? Mentioned that the changes were marked in red and otherwise, and I've got a software problem which I'm going to be dealing with tomorrow, so I couldn't pick out which ones they were. I think I had them from the past, but these are different, additional ones from the future. So I'm not as up to date as I might have been on exactly what the newer changes are, Alex, and I'm not asking you to go through all that, but I'm getting to the point I'd like to take some action on this, if not tonight, very soon. But what other comments do we have from staff or other reports you want to bring to our attention?
Very little changes, Alex, in red.
Yeah,
On the first page, there was an
First
E in
page.
development.
Yeah, that's all I really, maybe I thought there were more, what I heard.
there
But
were plenty.
I saw the E, but that was about it. And then,
I see quite a bit here.
okay, so maybe I'm not missing
We're
much.
not, why am I not seeing it in red? I don't know. I see the,
Not showing up on the document that was uploaded.
No.
yeah.
Well, they always say blame the guy not here, so. All right, well, I do have a copy that's functional.
Okay.
It wasn't you.
We did, we revised the, definition for qualifying trees, which is instead of protected, we removed protected. So anywhere protected trees were previously seen should read as qualifying trees.
2.
Yes, page 2, sorry. And that's item C.
How many changes do you want to bring to our attention, Alex? Just roughly.
I mean, I think at this time, honestly, Mayor, if, you know, council has had an opportunity to look at it with, you know, fresh eyes again, if you've been able to go through and changes or no changes that staff has presented, you may have had an opportunity to notify, you know, it's another change you would like to make. But at this point, you know, staff incorporated the direction we got from council and on those points. Other than that, it's
Well, can we
clarifying
approve
some
this tonight?
terminology.
We what?
We approve it tonight?
No, we're not in a
No,
work
we'd have to
session.
bring it to,
We have to take it to
a
the
regular meeting, but what would be, I guess my point is, what's new from the last time? What are the changes from the last time, other than the E and the development? Maybe just highlight those, and then those of us
Okay,
that
so-
didn't see it could go to that.
One big item was who can prepare the document showing compliance with the standard. You know, there was talk about a surveyor or what needs to be prepared. So
Where are
on
you?
page 6.
What section is
Page
that?
6.
On page 6, under,
Either by page number or by,
I'll give you
paragraph.
page and section. All right, so on page 6, it's section
6?
9513, right there.
Okay. Page 6, 9513,
Item A,
please. There we are. 9.9513. Is that right? Okay.
so all of that section A is pretty well new. Before, it was just a paragraph. Now we decided to go with a little bit more of a sort of a listing format. So we changed the language that included may be prepared by anyone with sufficient knowledge. So just basically that a landscape plan consistent with the requirements in Appendix B of the ordinance be submitted, and then list what required information shall be placed on that landscape plan, which are items little I through 7.
Can you scroll up?
You go up?
We have the right copy. Load it up.
I've just pulled up the one that was on Novus. Do you see something different, Jeff? Do you? Is there? Yeah.
What I'm reading from?
Yeah, that's what's in our hard copy, my hard copy.
And I bet I know what potentially could have happened because it's happened with us before, that maybe when Darren took it into the PDF format from the read through, underline and strike through, it went ahead and made the changes into the document. So it made those insertions.
The
and deletions.
changes you're calling attention to aren't showing up on you.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
We had this working
in
document. Then when
Word.
Darren went to transition it to a PDF to upload into Novus, it actually, when you do that with Word markup, it will actually do those deletions and insertions for
But he
you.
still has that document. He could send it to us, right?
Example, with regard to who can prepare a tree survey, right?
Or the landscape plan. And then tree surveys is section B.
Okay, yeah, A just says landscape plan shall be prepared consistent with. It doesn't say who can do it.
Right,
Correct.
which is saying it doesn't, anybody can do
Anybody
it
can do it, okay.
essentially.
Yeah.
E, that tree survey shall be
Yeah.
prepared by.
And that's where
surveyor.
tree
The tree
survey.
survey,
Which is
not a
different, yeah.
landscape plan.
Correct.
Yeah.
So B is where the change was, I guess.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that was for the intent, if you're trying to get credit, I'm trying to look at the screen and what's different with mine?
It does look different, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the formatting and everything is different.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm having a hard time.
Well, then maybe, well, two things. Maybe we need to defer any further discussion on this and try to get in our hands a marked copy that shows these latest changes, and then
Put it on the
move this
regular
along.
agenda
Is
for
is
next
there,
week.
is
looks
is there an
okay to me.
appetite to bring this back to you with an eye toward asking you to
approve
approve
it.
it in the near term?
Yeah.
Is that really the
Yeah.
question?
Yeah,
I think I'm the only person opposed to this. And I have a very thick file here. I've been back and forth with Darren. I'll present something, he presents it back, and I finally went through it, and and I'll send it to you guys. I think that we're getting way too close to regulating private property. I started with the guiding principles, guiding principle number 1, number 2, number 3, number 7, and pulled out what those guiding principles say. And I think the better course would have been, it's something Mr. Hoffman said twice, is let's do a streetscape restoration plan. I've liked the work that Kevin Brewer has done on our public property. But I also have additional concerns. I think that this infringes on the private communities, both Pinewall and CCNC. CCNC and Pinewall both, and CCNC has communicated with me. We both have longstanding stringent appearance guidelines, and the proposed ordinance conflicts with these guidelines. And then I got an email from the head of, this is the architectural committee chair at CCNC, and he says, my thoughts, this is an administrative nightmare. I don't see how the VOP can manage this. I believe that our covenants and regulations are sufficient to manage CCNC. Although unlike some of the proposed regulations, we are the masters of our CCNC universe, especially our undeveloped areas. I'm opposed. So, those are just some of the private community issues. Private community, General Assembly, we've heard the General Assembly, if we pass this, they're going to enact something that says we can't do it. And then I'm concerned about the legal exposure. Darren mentioned to me for the first time the other day a 2008 case, and he said, I don't know what happened, I don't know how it's resolved, but I see a controversy there. And I only see this as an extension of what happened there, which might, bring us another legal fight. So again, through working with the stuff that I've gotten from Darren, I've had to reorder my thoughts on this, and my thoughts are starting with the guiding principles. And I really don't see in these 1, 2, 3, 4 guiding principles that I've read through and gone through the comp plan, where we are encouraged to regulate private property. I see a lot about our corridors, but not private property. So anyway, I'm happy to send, I finished this today. I'm happy to send it to Darren, to all of you, so you can just see where my thoughts are right now. But this has been a red flag to me from the start. And I think the red flag just got bigger when we were asked to determine how far apart trees should be planted, and what size trees, and how many pine trees. And it just felt like we were interfering with private property rights. And I am all for making the village green, but I see it by doing it on our corridors and this streetscape restoration plan that Mr. Hoffman mentioned twice.
I was going to use this time, since we were not going to, have a document to look at, to kind of ask similar questions. I was wondering what the landscape community thought of these revisions, because, we were trying to walk a tightrope between the two. I thought we were. We were listening to the problems they had with it. So it's kind of in the same ballpark she's talking about.
So some of those were creative design, placement, site constraints in the placement, et cetera. And I really, we're going to do whatever you guys direct us to, and based on what we feel with enabling legislation, we can do. We feel that there are minor administrative modifications placed in here for alternative placing of the required plannings if development is proposed, if redevelopment is proposed as defined, that would give more than ample opportunities to not have any negative impact on placement with, in line with proximity to a foundation of a home, or utilities, or creative design.
What does architects and landscapers say about our rewrite?
I think you have to look at the basis of if are they looking at it with their architectural eyes, or their landscape eyes, or their philosophical eyes.
Okay.
We've had, and Darren and I have been as upfront and open with anybody about this language, that we will meet with you, we'll discuss it with you, we'll show you how it applies. Let's get a plan out. We'll go through it. I don't think you're going to hear many publicly say that, it's no big deal. We can easily meet that. But we can go through many applications that go above and beyond the standard that we're proposing. There's a very few that don't, and those are the ones that you guys and staff end up getting the calls, getting the emails about, getting the outcry that we have that, potentially, this draft ordinance could alleviate some of those concerns.
I was over there with Lydia until you re-described it as a buffering ordinance.
That's what it
All of a
is.
sudden, I got a little more comfortable when it was described as a buffering ordinance. But as soon as it gets into the yard, I'm kind of into the yard, I get a little weirded out.
That's where a buffer is going to be in a yard.
I know,
Yeah.
it's going to be in the perimeter.
Right.
But I'm having some of the same philosophical concerns, but I think when it became a buffering issue only, and it's not dictating how someone landscapes their yard, I mean, that's how I'm kind of getting there. I'm just trying to say, I'm getting there kind of sideways.
And the intent, again, with the direction that, staff was given and was all the language in the 2019 comprehensive plan is to, let's rebolster these efforts, let's
Right.
bring this back to the forefront, was that we couldn't, staff could not bring you a potential, draft ordinance or development regulation if we didn't feel it was in line with, our grant of power. So the buffering came strictly from the legislation.
Right, so,
That, the current legislation, I
I'm
might
saying,
add.
it made me more comfortable.
And there's going to be, the perfect one of these has yet to be drafted, written, or implemented. So I'm sure there could, until we apply it and apply it for a certain amount of time, will we know if there are real significant issues. But we have taken real-life situations, in between working on 160D and everything else. And, we felt this was as creative of a way to have a development landscaping standard, no different than what we have on the books today.
Right.
The only difference is the actual standard itself changes.
there's nothing in this, as I understand it from your earlier comments over time, Darren, there's nothing in this that is in violation of state law at this time, state statute, correct?
Based on our reading of the grant of power and the advice that we've been getting.
And we know that there are, it's often cited, at least 40 other communities across the state that have some sort of tree ordinance, buffering ordinance.
Some shape or form.
Right.
Probably more,
So this is not, we're not sticking out like a sore thumb.
yeah,
Probably
way more than infringement than anything we're
along the
proposing.
lines of in violation of state law, or they're taking advantage of a local bill.
Well, the local bill part of that comes through, yes, yes.
This was the list I got from Jamie
Right.
back in April. It was 32 municipalities, including Cornelius and Davidson, and one county that had tree ordinances by local bill.
Right.
But you
And that's
said
what I was referring to. It's local bills most of the time in
We
that
have a
number.
buffer ordinance, which is
Which we used to call a tree ordinance, and then we changed it to a buffer ordinance. But,
Yep.
today, as I was getting ready to leave, I got a phone call. I think who's the head of Moore County Home Builders? Paula Davis?
Paula Nash,
Paula
she's,
Nash.
yeah, she's the
And
CEO.
she asked me what was going on, and I said, well, it's on the work session, but she said, I'll tell you what she said to me. She was really surprised this was on the agenda. She said, Alex and Darren assured me they would let me know before this went on the agenda, and she said she didn't know this was on the agenda.
work session, it's not on an agenda.
Well,
meeting.
but she felt like she should have been given, she said, my phone has been ringing off the hook about this. And so, so that, I'm thrown into that, but
We'll reach out to her and
Or know that there's no
honestly,
public comment here.
I told her,
Yeah, yeah.
I told her.
I don't know that I was really fully aware that this was going to be a topic for discussion really until mid-week last week. So, I mean, the
You've
best-
spoken with her before, if I'm not incorrect.
we-
You spent a lot of time with her and the other persons that came to us months ago,
Correct.
talking about their problems with it, different landscapers and home builders and whatnot. And we heard all that, and we've taken that into consideration, I think.
And I'm sure that may be why she was
She-
upset, Lydia,
yeah.
is because she,
Paula
have
has
been
sent an
working on
email
it.
to the council. You all have it. It came in just before our meeting started. Unfortunately, unless my eyes are going wrong, she's titled it incorrectly. She's titled it, Discuss and Consider Ordinance 2112, NCGS Chapter 160D Amendments to the Pinehurst Development Ordinance. So she's talking about our buffering ordinance, whatever number, but she's referring
an
back in
email
her
about
title
160D.
to 2112. So when you see the 160D, it's from her. And that's fine. And she's written a letter, and it talks just as you've seen. You had it earlier, I think. You've had it.
She asked me what she could do, and I said, you can either send in a public comment or show up, but she must have sent in a public comment. I didn't.
Well, I would, I would like to have the corrected draft, red line, cross through, whatever, get the right draft. And I'm perfectly happy that if staff continues to spend time with people that oppose it or support it. I think there were some people here tonight that wanted to speak about this, but they left over. We changed the agenda a little around. So that's unfortunate, but I'm sure they can come back. And Lydia, I think you very well should circulate to the rest of the council whatever the papers that you have. That doesn't do any harm.
Meeting time at all.
But
about
I-
change of agenda, I don't think that affected. I mean, it was the same length, generally.
Yeah, well, I'm just,
Probably would have been longer the other way.
yeah, correct.
But can I just trying to get productive time out of this, about this subject matter? I know you had some issues, like on circular driveways. Has that been dealt with? Do you remember that, Judy? I mean,
You and Jody talked a lot about tree,
Can
the
we
tree
generally
tree
disregard-
width.
Trees in the front yard, I mean, let's look at the red line
Yeah.
draft and then
Okay.
we'll all
I think we
can
need to do
speak
that.
more
okay,
intelligently.
because I just was trying to, we all had some things we commented on, and I
And I think Darren sent a communication after, I think it was on a Friday afternoon, maybe in March or April, where he says, okay, the votes are in after getting all the tallies, and he let you guys know, I believe, what those changes were, or what the consensus was, what the final outcome was, and they should be incorporated in here, but we'll double check. Again, that is the one problem in putting something away for a few months and then coming back to it.
Thank you so much.
So put it on the next work session.
I think we should, yeah, I think we've got to keep this either moving along, either go forward with it or reject it, but I think we have to have it at the next meeting,
Especially
once we've
after
had it checked.
Lydia's just said she has some issues. I think it should stay in a work session,
Sure, that's all right, yeah.
I think this is good the way it is now. And I did sit and go through with Darren back in the spring, and with somebody from the PPOA Architectural Board, and it's not a problem for PPOA. Well,
I thought there was a provision that said that if a
Articulate
property owners
how that
association
is.
standards are higher, then that they govern.
And I don't know if they're higher is the problem, or is there, one's running this way, one's running the other way, so there's a strict conflict. But my understanding was the same, because we thought we had worked through it. Now, I can't imagine us, staff, having an opportunity to do research on every HOAs or CNRs but if we need to meet with them, if that's a direction to try to figure that out, but
All those conflicts.
Why can't they just live by their perfectly good appearance standards that have, Primewells have been there since 1987, they work. You heard what CCNC said, I'm not sure, I mean, like,
I'm not
You raised a
proposing
good
anything
point,
different.
because, I mean, to the point that we hear concern from our public out there is not from those communities.
Right.
It's from everybody else that doesn't have a PPOA.
Right, exactly.
well, the president of, I had another email from the president of CCNC, and he said, why don't you just exempt these private communities?
We can certainly do that. I mean, we're not intentionally putting something out there to take control away from these private communities. And again, we don't get any complaints about landscaping in any of those communities.
Right.
Well, any complaints
so
about
that's-
landscaping go to their,
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair provision we could have.
meeting with them, but
Well, I don't,
Well, even exempting them.
For
yeah,
example,
I think it's, as Jeff said, that's not where the complaints are coming from.
Yeah.
So,
any complaints go directly to their homeowners association and they're dealt with.
but the lack of a
But they're-
homeowners
but they- yeah,
association.
They can have standards, whereas no other residential
Exactly.
communities can, so.
Exactly.
Correct. All right, so let's,
I want to support this because I don't want Murdochsville Road to happen again.
Exactly.
But
That's
isn't
why I'm trying to figure out, and we know that that was platted before we were a municipality for the public. You know, we didn't approve, I mean, it was already platted long before we were a municipality, so we didn't have anything to do with that, but that's what we're trying to make sure doesn't happen.
But even though it was plotted, if we'd had standards like this, we could have required
Well, that's
Right.
good. I didn't know that.
buffering.
I didn't know that.
yeah, it's really kind of two different things going on there, I think.
I did not know that.
Zoning on the one hand, but then the buffering requirements on the other, but
Yeah.
I take your point.
misstating.
All right, so let's move that to the next work session. Alex, you can circulate a copy that'll show the markings, and Lydia, feel free to send your material around. I think we all would like to read that as well.
Alex, is
All
it, do you know anything about the 2008 lawsuit and that settled? Or there was a 2008 lawsuit and apparently it was challenging our landscape requirements and landscaping requirements were allowed to stand.
Could we take
But
that
I-
offline?
Yeah,
I'd like to find out more about that lawsuit. Do you have anything in your files? Darren had mentioned it to
The only
me.
person in this room that might know is Jeff. Does that ring a bell?
Darren mentioned it in one of his latest emails. I can follow up with Darren when he gets back. I can.
this is a 2008 lawsuit regarding buffering or trees or what?
The only thing I can potentially think of is maybe going back when we had the Community Appearance Commission.
Correct,
There was
yeah.
a lawsuit there because people had to bring forth landscape plans, and we had citizen group
Doing
For
things-
lack of a
we were
term,
doing
that
things
would-
were not allowable under the general statutes.
All right,
for doing things of that nature. Now, I don't know if that's the one he's
It's not
referring
even
to.
close to that.
but maybe it's that.
That
All right,
makes
let-
sense.
I think that's taken us off mark here. Let's, Darren, you can get together with Darren about that at another time. But it may be able to do with the appearance commissions going taken out. I recommend we move on in the agenda here and get to number 4. We have a request to discuss 211 zoning, and we've had some material circulated by Jane. I think Lydia's familiar with that. I'm a little bit familiar with it. Jane, would you like to discuss this and talk about your way forward? Jeff has offered some other ideas
Yeah,
with
we've
respect to
had
that.
a request from the PPOA to take a look at this strip of land, Focus Area 5.
Right.
And there's concern because there's new interest that's arising in it, and we don't have standards in place that comport with the comp plan's vision for the area, which is low intensity and small scale office use in a Turnberry wood type of model with lots of green space and leafy streets and so forth. So what's the best way to get to that? I circulated, seem to have left my paper copy at home. Just a 2-page memo.
Right.
With a list of, one thing would be to make some text amendments to the OP zone. And those would be to put in a standard for building scale, to increase the landscape requirements, which because the commercial zone, hopefully nobody will flip out. Reduce the lighting, allowed lighting. And I saw your note back to me that said that you didn't think that the property's overlooked, but they do actually, in that the zone is a strip of land, most of which is relatively narrow, 300 to 400 feet wide off of the south side of 211. But in the middle, there's a big round area that's much deeper. That's about 800 feet deep. And that area is a hole. That's why there's a stream there. And so the housing along, this abuts it from the Pine Wild Homes, because it goes down into this hole, all overlook it. And it's not a house, you can pick a particular house and say, well, if you just walk right out the back of that house, it may be level. But they're looking down at that hole. So where the big buildings would go, everybody does overlook it in that sense. Anyway, but I had a list of text amendments to the OP zone. And I gave a list of the other parcels of land in the OP zone that are not yet developed that might be impacted by that, and there aren't very many. There's one up on 15501 north of the hospice. That's big, but it's set back from the road. It's just somebody trying to break in by drilling through the wall. There's down in, actually in Pinehurst South, there's a couple little bits of it. Anyway, so those would be affected. Now, it's a little bit tricky because the ETJ, this strip of land is in the ETJ, and that means that it has to have the same zoning as something else in the village. So we can't say, all right, we're going to take this focus area 5 and do something unique to it. We can't do that with it, the way we're doing the small area plans. So then, doing the text amendments for the OP zone would be tedious and, lots of writing, but I volunteer to help.
But is this a,
Be happy to hear.
Is that a good thing?
is this a task for P and Z?
So that's alternative number 1. And frankly, my ideas for that go back to 2016. All right, we worked on a report. Actually, Mr. Colmer was involved in that report. And we handed it in to the village in 2017.
Blame the guy that wasn't here.
And
Bruce?
And
anyway, so, it's not rocket science to do. It could be done. The next alternative is Jeff's idea of a highway overlay zone. Put a highway overlay zone on it. And I know.
Let's call it an overlay zone. Overlay zones can be used for many different things.
Okay,
but-
overlay zone is on our list to work on anyway. I don't know what would be in that overlay zone in the way of maybe tweaking some of the uses that are allowed in the OP zone. There are some kind of, zippy uses that we might want to, but a highway overlay zone you think of as being designed to address what somebody who's driving in a car on the road sees. So you want to make sure that the edges of the road are nicely landscaped. But of course, with this particular focus area 5, we need to be concerned about the people who border it on the other side, the zone boundary on the south side, not just on the road side. So a highway overlay zone in particular, I don't know if it'd be that helpful. The county's highway overlay zone is 400 feet in width, which would do a lot of it, but it wouldn't do the big round part in the middle. And so a third alternative is if we put together a Turnberry Woods area in Pinehurst South, we say part of it we are going to do as Turnberry Woods offices, which is what the comp plan, and we develop a model with form-based codes and so forth for that. we could maybe say, that's going to be our tie to the village, and we rezone Highway 5 to match what we designed for Pinehurst South. That might work. All three of those are going to take a while once we start going on it. And unless, you listen to me and absorb what I say, take it in and just vote the way I ask you to. But in which case it could go pretty quickly. But anyway, but they might take a while. So do we put a moratorium in place until we can do our work so that the concerns raised by the PPOA, are put on hold? And then there's an alternative to a moratorium, and that is the special intensity allocation, is it allocation? Sorry, I'm losing my mind.
SIA.
It's after 9 o'clock. This area is in a protected watershed, which means that it can only have 24% impervious coverage unless it gets a special intensity waiver from the council. And we have a policy in place that says, well, in our PDO, we have a section that says, if you've got one of these watershed overlay zones, a developer may apply for a special intensity allocation, in which case the council must approve it in accordance with whatever policy we have. So we have a policy in place, which I did email, but I'll pass them around. And the policy says the council only gives the special intensity allocations if you're either in the village limits or if you have an active voluntary annexation petition, which means that a developer can say, here's my voluntary annexation petition, and even if the village didn't want to annex the piece of land, had no interest in doing that, they'd then have to grant the special intensity allocation. So it puts the decision-making in the developer's hands. If we amended this section, and I heard about this from Darren in the first place, and I questioned him about it, but, he got away from it. Anyway, if we amend this to say, it's the policy of the village to only allocate special intensity allocations to properties that are already located within the corporate limits of Pinehurst, and then put a period there, then if somebody was in the ETJ, they could still come to us and say, we'd like to be annexed in order that we can get a special intensity. But we think we've got more control over deciding whether or not to annex than we do over deciding whether or not to grant a special intensity allocation.
Yeah, I recall you making that suggestion one time before. and
Yeah.
I recall my concern with that was that it creates an artificial limitation on the application of special intensity allocations which have been apportioned to us on an acreage basis based on the totality of our planning jurisdiction. And because of that, I don't think we can limit it. I don't think we can say that you can only have a special intensity allocation if you are in the village of Pinehurst. Because the allocation was given to us for our entire planning jurisdiction. And there are parts of our ETJ that are in our planning jurisdiction for which we cannot legally annex.
We can't legally annex?
They're
Oh,
beyond the border,
because they're too far away, they're not abutting.
beyond the
and they're-
border, yeah.
Or we
on
violate the
limit.
10% thing, or
Yeah. All right.
that would not pass legal muster.
So that solution to change section 1 of the ordinance doesn't work. It has,
But there might be an opportunity just to clarify. And I've had this conversation with Darren before as well, and I never have interpreted this policy and overlaid with the language in our ordinance the way he does, because I think that the ordinance, the PDO says you must use the policy in order, in considerations about what you're going to approve. That's the way I interpret that language. And then when you get here, it says you will only do it in these cases. That doesn't mean you will do it, but you will only do it if one of these conditions is met.
So what would we,
So,
How
maybe
would-
we
what would we
clarify this
hang our
language to
hat
say
on?
something like, it shall be the policy of the Village of Pinehurst to only allocate special intensity allocations to properties. It shall be the policy of the Village of Pinehurst that only properties that are located within the corporate limits of Pinehurst, or properties which have an active voluntary annexation petition to the Village of Pinehurst, are eligible for consideration of special intensity allocation. I guess you still have the same problem with the darn,
have the same problem?
can't, because some of those properties can't annex.
So is this a job for the planning and zoning group to look at this issue?
Yeah.
And come back with a recommendation and move it up? I mean, I'm just looking at the process here, rather than,
Obviously not for the special intensity allocation policy. For option 1, I have concerns until we can do an in-depth analysis, because the last thing we want to do is create a whole host of nonconformities by adopting other standards in the OP zone. A large chunk of OP zoning properties are in another focus area that we want to consider, the hospital district 3.
A little bit there and a little bit up 15501. Jane's got them all listed
There's
here.
some in Pinehurst South, which, are covered in, our current small area planning. So without doing an in-depth analysis of just what ripple effect there could be in just doing a straight amendment to the OP zoning, I wouldn't generally support that as being, the option to jump on and set forth on a path and involve the planning and zoning board on. An overlay maybe, and with overlays, you can have development standards set, more stringent setbacks, uses, landscaping, lighting, location of parking areas, and other screens. And there's an option for that.
The county does that, though, right?
Well, they've adopted their
Only
highway
on
corridor.
highway
Yeah, in their
corridors.
zoning
Ours.
planning
Which is
jurisdiction.
We have one too.
Oh, okay, because the county's been not moving very quickly on overlays,
Yeah.
so.
But as Jane pointed out, that highway overlay, not just overlays, has some problems with it, given the depth of the lot, if I understood your comment, and the backing up to it.
What other kind of overlay would it be?
We have watershed overlays
Have
right
what?
now. We have watershed overlays right now. That's what the special intensity allocation we're talking about.
We have a
is.
Pinehurst
Application
South
of our-
overlay. We
Yeah.
have a local historic district overlay.
Okay.
Oh, but that also, there's the state statutes about that, say if you're going to do something stricter in the watershed than what the state statutes say, then, you're going to get a noogie, so.
Yeah, but the point is,
Well-
there are a wide range of potential uses for an overlay. It's just a modification of base zoning.
Yeah.
We'd have to have a public hearing?
So,
Is that a problem if we
Well,
have an ETJ parcel
I
that
think we have
has
to look at
an
that. It's a good question.
overlay that doesn't have an
My
exact
recollection
replica?
is that the statute requires that the base zoning exist in our municipal limits. I don't recall any mention of overlays, but
right. My concern is that this issue with this land keeps coming up. And we're at risk, I think, and we've known that for a while, and maybe some things will cover it and maybe they won't. So I would very much be interested in taking these ideas or others and working through the planning department to come up with a solution here in the most practical, efficient, speedy way. And I think that's, using Jane's document here, I mean, is a good way forward. Jeff, you've given some good comment on that earlier today.
They were more at risk in the medical district.
Well, that could be covered if the
I think
OP
we're more at
changed.
risk there, and maybe even the ETJ. And then we are in that.
Well, but we
I
know
think
we,
we're more at risk, the village of Pinehurst. I don't know. I think, I wanted to include the hospital district in this. And,
Or small area plans, you mean?
no, small area plan. And I think that is scaring me.
A lot more economic engine there, yeah.
It's scaring me that it's just happening organically and there's no small area plan there. That really worries me more than this. So, I mean, I'm not saying this isn't important, but
More demonstrated development
maybe
interest there.
if we're going to do that, then we sure should look at the bigger problem, the medical district. Maybe we should really prioritize and do them both. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying that I've really been scared, especially when you see how much you can see with the new cancer center. You can see I just see it. I think that it's a major thing. When you look strategically long-term, I'm really scared if we don't get some.
Okay, that's great, but this is what's on the agenda for tonight.
Yeah,
And I'd really like to make a move
but you've
on
raised that
this.
point before too about the medical district, so
Yeah, and I'm just trying to say, if you're going to do something for that, I mean, do something that's a bigger problem.
Well, this is our corridor, and our long-range plan talks about our corridors, and that's an important corridor into southern Will County.
Well, I agree. I'm not saying not do
Both
it.
sides.
I'm saying do both.
Well, is there consensus to have the planning department look at some of these alternatives and come back with what the solution may be, and at the same time, or in addition to that, maybe we need to look at some other areas to go on. But I think we've got, certainly on my part, a lot of interest here in that area, and we've had a lot of commentary and concern about it for a while.
Well, what if a small area planning process is moving forward with the Pinehurst South area, if a standard doesn't develop out of there that we implement there, I know there's a timing concern with addressing this issue, but if that process can play itself out, and then we can have that development standard and that zoning and or corporate limits, then we can then be able to, be thinking and considering the 211 area at the same time. And then, I know it might not fit in yours or the, the greater Pine Law community's timeframe, but there are some environmental impacts to development of those parcels, blue line streams and buffering in watersheds. There's some very stringent development, and, that doesn't necessarily impact all of those lots, but some of the more developable. So we would be hearing, our phone would be ringing, we would be receiving emails in our office if there was someone who was really interested in bringing an application in. Not to diminish any concerns about that, because we know what kind of development is happening right now.
But that could change tomorrow morning.
It could. It very well could.
And, I brought this up in January, and now it's the end of July. I brought this up in December of 2019.
But I think we can't
But we
act on.
are on a council-approved plan right now with regard to allocation of our planning department's resources. And the reality is, what the plan that the council, you all approved last winter, has us tackling this as part of the broader PDO rewrite. If you want to alter that plan, great, but recognize that other things that you determined were a higher priority for our planning staff to work on last winter are going to get pushed back.
I mean, I think it's a bandwidth issue.
Excuse me?
It's a bandwidth issue to address it. I mean, not that it's not important.
Well, some-
And I don't want to say that,
I would
we
just
don't
say-
have those resources, or that, Jane, I know you will come in the office and provide help and input and get that done. We would get it for the Planning and Zoning Board, but we've already hired these consultants to help us with our small area plans that, we could, and we may not have an agreeable solution that could come out of there that we could also apply with that area, but I mean, that was a desire. We said, that's why we selected that consulting group and why we incorporated like form-based design and those other items in the contract.
Well, that's one of the suggestions that's made here, though, isn't it? To do something in Pinehurst South. I think you refer to that, do you not?
Well,
And so why don't we, again, why don't we?
Possibility exists, but, you know, but who knows?
Well, I would say let's, if that would be all right, have the planning staff take these under consideration, including what Jeff's comments were earlier about overlay districts. It's a little, I think it's outlined here, but in a different way. And come back with a proposal, maybe something that takes 2 years, and maybe something that takes 2 months, I don't know. But I am concerned that we just keep looking at this area, and seems like something we could do, even if it's a little bit simple, that would help alleviate further problems.
I just think we have to look at the broader picture, and if we're doing the small area plans, when is the form-based code going to come out that could help this? And the versus creating a new initiative, going after this in a different way. Maybe it would be simple, but maybe not. So I think, I mean, we need to rely on you guys telling us where you think these line up with the stars or not.
I think that's kind of what I'm saying, yeah. All right. So would that be all right?
Saying I've been talking about the medical district and nothing's occurred, Jane, so don't feel alone. Been talking about a small area plan for the medical district for a long time. So, and I can't seem to get it done.
So the next two small area plans might be the medical district in this area.
I mean, you're not alone in voicing things and.
Let's you and I talk about the medical district, you know, at another point. I'd like to go through that. All right? Okay. Let's see if we make some progress on that without too much difficulty. That brings us to item number 5. Any other work session business for tonight? Seeing none. Is there a motion to recess the work session and enter a closed session? Thank you, Jane. You're reading the motion, are you not, Jane?
I'm sorry?
Are you, I think you're reading the motion to recess the work session and enter a closed session?
I move to recess the work session and enter into a closed session pursuant to NCGS 143-318.11A5 to establish or to instruct the public body staff or negotiating agents concerning the position to be taken by or on behalf of the public body in negotiating the price and other material terms of a contract or proposed contract for the acquisition of real property by purchase, option, exchange, or lease.
There's a motion by Kevin Drum. Is there a second?
Second?
Can I, before you
And
vote?
I was
can
going to
make a
ask the
comment?
village manager before we voted